On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks have a 3-game winning streak snapped on this MLK Day after a loss in New York. We'll get into all of what transpired, a starting lineup change that people were definitely talking about in a big way on Monday, and much more. And all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1891 of Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday. It's MLK Day, and today's podcast is sponsored by the folks at PrizePicks. And now it's the perfect time to join up with folks at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app right now and use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. That's right. No need to actually win to get the bonus. It is guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check out the podcast and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts. That includes Apple and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. And please like this video on that platform as you're watching it. And please also spread the word about the podcast to your friends and your family. And today's show, we'll be diving into what became a 119-110 loss for the Hawks up in New York. Their winning streak now over at 3. They now fall to 22-20 on the season. Also, a weird quirk, the Hawks now play the Knicks 5 times this year because of the extra NBA Cup game. This is game number 3 of 5. Atlanta won the first 2. The Knicks get this one. And finally, the Hawks had, this period of one home game in 24 days because of the postponement that was due to weather a couple weeks ago against Houston. But one home game in 24 days, and the Hawks managed to go 5-5 in that run. Now, that's not sexy, obviously, 5-5 in a 10-game span. But doing that while not being home really at all, also getting a win without your top 3 scorers earlier this week, getting a win in Boston. The Hawks did a pretty good job navigating all of this. Also, Jalen missing a bunch of time, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the Hawks have done a pretty good job. And overall, yeah, you want to win this game, obviously. The Knicks are a competition point for the Hawks. They did a good job against New York in all 3 games, honestly. They played reasonably well. They could have won this one, to be sure. But in the end, the Knicks kind of pull away late, and we'll get into kind of how that all unfolded, because the Hawks did lead this game by 10 early on. They were up 8 at halftime, and then had a pretty disastrous third quarter on defense to kind of let things slip away a little bit. But I'll start here. The offense was not good enough, in my view, in this game, and that's kind of where I want to begin my analysis of this contest. They had a 112 offensive rating. That's solid enough. About 109 when you actually strip out all the garbage time, kind of take away the final minute, etc. But the Knicks are a great offensive team, like top 3 in the league, great this year. They're just, though, average defensively, I would say. They have some good guys defensively, like a lot of wings, and that kind of gives you some issues when you could throw Bridges and Anunoby, also Miles McBride, who's more of a guard, but still, they have some pretty good perimeter defenders. But they do also start Jalen Brunson, who isn't great. And then Karl-Anthony Towns is not awful, but is not really a great defensive anchor at center. So long story short, the Knicks are an average-ish defensive team by the numbers this year. And the Hawks were below average in their efficiency in this game. So when you combine those two things, that was probably safe to say it was not good enough, particularly after halftime. The Hawks were up by 8 at halftime because they played pretty well offensively in the first half, but then in the second half, they had 48 points on 48 possessions. That's exactly 100 offensive rating after halftime, and it's going to be hard to win, especially on the road in New York, when you are not scoring at an efficient level against a very, very potent Knicks offense. The big issue offensively in this game was ball security for Atlanta. And when I say that, I mean turnovers. They had 24 turnovers in this game that led directly to 29 points for the Knicks. They turned it over in about 25% of their possessions in the game. For reference, like the league worst is like 17 or 18%. So the Hawks had a just disastrous ball security game across the board here. Trae Young was a big part of that. He had 9 turnovers. I often explain that he's going to have turnovers because he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. The best players in the league, literally, like stars, always lead the league in turnovers. I say all that to say he can't have 9. Trae was loose with the ball in this game. Too many turnovers. That kind of certainly has to start with him. He was a big part of the ball security issues. Usually this year, it's been when Trae sits that they have all these turnover problems. Not today. He was a big part of that problem in this game. Also, it wasn't just him. 3 for Bogey, 3 for Dyson, 2 for Hunter, 2 for Capela, 2 for Jalen. It was a family affair of ball security problems for the Hawks in this game. And if there was one area of this contest on offense or defense, which the Hawks probably had the biggest issue, it was there. And that cost them, I thought, in this game. They actually did shoot the ball well from 3-point range. Usually when the Hawks fail to score this year at an efficient level, it's because they can't make threes. They were actually 13 of 30. That was better than the Knicks. They shot 43% from three in this game. That's more than enough usually, but the turnovers were so bad and they struggled around the rim. They did not shoot the ball at all very well around the rim and sort of inside the arc in this one. They also got basically nothing from Bogey and Garrison, and that's going to be hard for the offense to function just without your floor spacers on the floor. And was not playing well. Also, Jalen Johnson was not very efficient and productive offensively in this game. That combination plus the ball security led to some problems. They did rebound the ball very well on the offensive glass, I would say, but it wasn't enough to counteract all of the issues elsewhere. And yeah, Trey was productive as he usually is. Hunter had a good game off the bench with 22 points, but it was not a game in which like anyone was like electric offensively, save for a few moments of Hunter and a few moments of Trey making threes in that first half. It was a pretty pedestrian offensive performance from the team on the whole, considering the opponent and all of that. Defensively, wasn't great either necessarily. I will say the Hawks were underdogs in this game for a reason. They were like 7-point dogs at FanDuel. So losing this game by 9 points in a very competitive game is pretty normal stuff. It's not like something to get to sort of overreact to, I would say. But defensively, they had a 120 defensive rating. That's actually quite bad, but it is almost exactly what the Knicks are averaging for the season. They are, again, very, very good on offense. But the problem was the second half. So the Hawks went into halftime up by 8, as I said before, and it was a two-way issue in the second half on offense and defense. So I mentioned before they had a 100 offensive rating after halftime. Defensively, they had a 135 defensive rating. That's very, very bad, including a 40-point third quarter from the Knicks, in which they scored a 1.6 points per possession. That's going to get you beat pretty much every time if you are the defending team. And New York shot 60% on twos in the game. A lot of runs to the rim. Perimeter issues. I thought Dyson was really good, but other than that, he was kind of the only guy that I think stood out as a positive defensively. The Knicks had 31 assists in the game as well. The Hawks did force some turnovers, 16 of them, but not enough when you turn the ball as much as they did on offense in this one. And they generally lost the possession battle on the whole. And when you're playing a team like the Knicks, who has a bunch of offensive firepower, you have Brunson, you have Towns, you have Bridges and Anunoby, etc. To lose on the margins as well is going to be tough to overcome. And that kind of happened in this one for Atlanta. So big picture, as we'll get into later on in the podcast, probably the number one talking point of this game was the starting lineup change that the Hawks made, going to Okongwu in place of Capela. I'll have more on that later on. But beyond that, as far as the actual way this game unfolded, it was a C- effort from the Hawks. I would say the Hawks were not terrible in this game. They were underdogs for a reason, but it was winnable. It was there for them. They were up 8 at halftime. And if you view that through that prism, it's a little bit more disappointing, I would say. But I would say the first half performance was generally like an A, I would say, grade for Atlanta. After halftime, it was a letdown, as you might imagine, given the way that they lost the game. And I think it was a minus 17 overall net after halftime for the Hawks. But overall, it was a middling performance, not one that was like panic worthy for me. Again, especially when you just won 3 games in a row and the vibes are pretty good. But unfortunately, the Hawks were not playing at home on this day as they should have been. I thought Trey did a good job pregame talking about how it was frustrating to the team that they were not playing at home on MLK days. They almost always do. I echoed that both when the schedule came out back in August and then also this week. It's not a good thing that the Hawks weren't playing at home in this game, but taking that all away, just focusing on the basketball, it was a game that the Hawks would like back, I'm sure, but not one that I would panic about too much. And we'll get kind of more details later on in the podcast. First, though, a word from our partners on today's show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, they made the NFL playoffs even more exciting at FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, you get about $5, you get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet at FanDuel. That's $300 to keep the action going for you right now. The FanDuel app is also easy to navigate, and they have a variety of bets to keep the games exciting at every turn. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite teams or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, you are covered across the board at FanDuel, and they have everything you're looking for in the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props and game props, future bets, same-game parlays, live betting, and so much more. The FanDuel app is safe. It's secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes the NBA and the NFL, of course, plus college football, MLB, WNBA, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing stuff, MMA. Everything that you're looking for in the sports space is really all there for you at FanDuel. And the place to go is FanDuel.com. Join up today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. One more time, that is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we'll dive in now to kind of how this game unfolded, but I do want to begin with what I teased earlier, the big starting lineup change for Atlanta. It was the Okongwu starting for the Hawks at center with Capela coming off the bench. And listeners will know this. Just if you're a regular listener, you will definitely know this already. But if you're new or not a every show listener, my general belief, and people yell at me about this, and that's totally fine. You don't have to agree with me on this. My general belief is that starting lineups are very overrated. They're not as important as people make them out to be in general. For instance, this Hawks team has not been starting DeAndre Hunter most of the season, even though he's definitely one of their best 5 players for a long time. Bogdanovic, this year's not been very good, but obviously in previous years, he was not starting despite being one of their best 5 players. Like, the Hawks don't really always start their best players. And by the way, a lot of teams don't always start their best 5 players. It's kind of what happens in the league. It's more important, in my view, generally speaking, to see who plays more minutes, who closes games, all of that. It is just not as big of a deal to me as it is to others. Now, with that said, I'm not silly enough to say that it's not notable. It's very notable that the Hawks started Okongwu in this game. For one thing, it is quite literally the first time in Okongwu's 5-year career in Atlanta that he started a game in which Clint Capela was both healthy and not limited in any fashion, injury-wise, restriction-wise, etc. Capela had come off the bench only 3 times in his Hawks career before this. It was only after he had been injured and he was easing back in. When he's been 100% full go, he has started every single game since he got to Atlanta. And that changed today. Now, we don't know if that's going to change moving forward. This might have been a matchup thing. The Knicks are not exactly a team that has this big hulking center. Towns is a very versatile perimeter big compared to some other players. And notably, in this uptick from Okongwu, the last few games, it's been against a bunch of teams that don't have a lot of centers. Phoenix plays small. Boston was without Porzingis and Horford, for instance. Like, all of these teams recently the Hawks have been playing have not been big hulking centers. But it's a very notable change, and one the Hawks have not been eager to make in recent years until now. First things first, I am totally fine with this. I know people kind of thought that I was going to be mad or something like that. No, I mean, my stance is that Capela is underrated by most people, but he's not playing very well right now. I'll certainly acknowledge that. He is on the downside, as I've always talked about the last year or two. He's not the same guy he used to be. And generally speaking, I think Okongwu is a starting caliber player. It's not weird at all that he would start for the Hawks. I also think that it would have been fine with me, basically, if they hadn't changed the lineup. I think that people were clamoring for this. I do understand why. Okongwu is younger. He's definitely more easy to watch, more aesthetically pleasing, more talented on offense. He's a better offensive player, full stop, than Capela, which I've been saying for a while. But I think people would have been mad about this if he kept playing Capela more than Okongwu. But it's more important to me who plays more and who closes games. And in recent days, when Okongwu has played better than Capela, he's been closing and playing more, and that's totally fine. The Hawks don't have a dominant starting center. Like, I did this actual research today. There are only 7 or 8 guys in the entire league at center that average 32 plus minutes a game, that are like full-on starter minutes players at center. And they're pretty much all stars, or at least some level of star. It's Jokic, it's Wembanyama, it's Bam Adebayo, it's Domantas Sabonis, Anthony Davis. Like, it's guys who have made all-star teams that play 32, 31, 32, 33 minutes a game. That's the level you have to get to at center to play that much in the NBA. Most teams have a rotation of a guy who might play 28, might play 25, whatever. And I think right now, Okongwu playing that much would be totally fine with me. I would love it if he would break out. I love that draft pick when it happened. I was higher on than most people were. But it's also fair to say, and I've said it multiple times, that Okongwu, through his first 4.5 seasons, has not forced the hand of the Hawks to make him the guy moving forward. And that's part of why Capela's still here, all those things. We'll litigate that at a different time and date. But it is definitely a notable thing that happened today. We'll get into it later. The Hawks were better overall with Okongwu on the court today in the game, although that was really only in the first half. In the second half, actually, the starters, including Okongwu, got kind of flatlined by the Knicks, and it was better with the bench. But yeah, generally speaking, the Hawks are going to be better offensively with Okongwu on the court. That's been the case for a while. The problem is defensively, they generally have been better with Capela. Now, if that will continue, we'll see. But in the meantime, this is a normal thing. Like, it's definitely different because the Hawks just haven't done it. But in the grand scheme of things, Okongwu starting over Capela is not a shocking thing to me beyond just the precedent. But I think it's just it's a move that I don't hate whatsoever. I think it's acceptable. I think it makes total sense to me. And then we'll see how they handle it moving forward. I think the next game will be interesting to see if they stay with this, because they're playing the Pistons, a team that has a little bit more of a conventional big man rotation. If it's still Okongwu, then that kind of cements it's more of a permanent change. And if not, we will see. All right, no more on that for now. We'll come back to it later on if we need to. But the Hawks did start this game very well. It was actually 18-8 to begin the game for Atlanta. Unfortunately for the Hawks, that was their biggest lead of the game. Was 10 points, 18-8. but they made their first 3 threes. They were flying around on offense, as you might expect. Rotationally, it was 9 guys for Atlanta in this one. It was the guys you might expect. The starters, which of course includes Okongwu tonight, plus B. Krejci. Then it was Hunter and Capela and Bogdanovic and Garrison Matthews rounding it out. Now, in the first half, I don't like the way the Hawks handled the rotation of Capela and Okongwu. So in the second half, it was much more of what I would have wanted them to do. Starting Okongwu was fine again, but they only played him 6 minutes in the first half. Then they asked Capela to play 11 straight minutes. Now, some teams do that with their backup center, who's often a younger guy, an energy big, etc. But for a veteran like Capela, who's been, he's in his 30s now, etc., having him play 11 minutes in a row is not a good idea, especially when he hasn't done that. And the Hawks really don't play him that much ever in a row. So I don't understand that. I think he probably got tired during that stretch. I think Quinn figure that out later on or not. But if you're going to do that kind of dance going back and forth, I think it would be good to have them kind of stagger a little bit more evenly, shorter stints. And they did that after halftime, which maybe was notable to me. Garrison Matthews was the 9th guy, as I said before. They didn't rest Trey and Jalen at the same time the whole game, but they have been not staggering them as much as they used to, and to mix results on that. The Hawks had an offensive kind of hiccup late in the first quarter. They didn't have a field goal for like 3.5 minutes. As I sort of got into earlier on, ball security was the problem early and often. They had 8 turnovers in the first quarter. That was tough to see. They're up by 1, actually, still going in the second quarter, but the offensive drought, they had no field goals for like 6 minutes. Trey finally made a 3, but it was a 19-5 run by the Knicks from late Q1 to early Q2, and that put the Hawks down by 6 points. I will say part of that was that it was Capela. It was a little bit clunkier on offense. I thought there was this interesting back and forth. Like, I'm always a big fan of nuance, even to my detriment. People might yell at me about this. It looked like, to some, and I get it, that it was like just because Capela's off the court now they can't score, where that was part of it, to be sure. Okongwu is much more dynamic than Capela, but the Hawks also made all of their threes to begin the game. I think they were like 5 of 6 to begin the game from 3, and they stopped making their threes. So it was much more prominent because of that swing. Anyway, just always certainly look a step further is what I would always say. Anyway, a big run at the end of the half, 16-6, to go by 8 points at the break, did Atlanta. A monster block by Jalen Johnson with like 2 minutes to go in the half. Trey had it going. He had 5 threes. He had it going back and forth. It's kind of jawing with Mikal Bridges and Miles McBride, having fun doing that. He had 18 in the first half. The Hawks made 9 threes, but also had 14 turnovers in the first half, which is pretty crazy. But looking ahead a little bit, the Hawks had 9 threes in the first half, only 4 after halftime. That was a big part of why they cooled off to some degree. But I will say this now. It was a difficult game to watch and consume, especially the first half. There were so many whistles in the first half. If you watched it, you will definitely know what I'm talking about. It was like an hour and 20-minute half. Like, it just was interminable, basically. And I did not enjoy watching it as much as I usually would enjoy watching good basketball between 2 good teams. And tough stuff there. Also, there were 3 challenges in the first half and 4 challenges in the first 26 minutes of the game. They all were positive winning challenges, by the way, 2 on both sides. But that shouldn't happen over the course of a game. Like, you can't miss that many calls, and they were missing calls. It was bad officiating a lot of times in this one. So, unfortunately, as I teased before, a third quarter swoon for Atlanta, 40-27 in favor of the Knicks. New York had 1.6 points per possession in that period. The starters, who were very, very good in the first half, were very bad in the second half. I believe they were like minus 15 or something like that as a unit in that second half, including a lot of that in the third quarter. They couldn't score. So again, it was not just the bench Capela-led units. I think actually in the second half, the Hawks had a sub 100 offensive rating with their starters on the court. They just couldn't put the ball in the basket. It was clunky. They missed jump shots, etc. There was one nice lob from Jalen to Okongwu for a dunk to start winning a little bit. And I thought Dyson was really good in that third quarter. He had a nice drive and steal to the rim. I thought he was really good overall, actually, in that period. Hunter got it going, a couple of big shots. But look, defensively, they just couldn't get stops in that third quarter. And I always point this out, but when you don't score, it makes life harder on your defense. They're not independent entities, your offense and your defense. They can be different. Obviously, there are games when your offense is good, defense is not, etc. But when you can't score, it puts a bad spot for your defense, and that was the case in this one to some degree. But in the first 9.5 minutes of the second half, the Knicks were 16 of 25 from the field, and they grabbed 6 of their 9 misses on the glass, which means you're just not getting any stops, basically. And the Hawks just weren't at all. There was a nice run at the end of the quarter, actually behind Capela and Jalen on the offensive glass. They had, I think, 3 or 4 offensive rebounds in a short period of time. There's one put back by Clint. That was a nice bucket. They were down by 5 at the end of the third quarter. And again, ball security issues were a little bit better actually in that period, but it was everything else, including the defense. And then in the fourth, I'll be a little bit quicker on this one to some degree in the fourth quarter. But Hunter had it going for a while, but after that, he kind of cooled off, had some bad turnovers along the way. I think 2 of them were like back to back in pretty ugly fashion. And the league kind of just like leaked out a little bit for New York. It was a big 3-point play on a offensive rebound by Capela, actually, when it was teetering. That was a big kind of stop the bleeding moment for the Hawks offensively. But coming out of a timeout with like 6 to go, Jalen had an awful turnover that led to a Karl-Anthony Towns jumper on the other end of the floor. They're down by 10. And at that point, down 10 with like 5.5 to go, it's not unwinnable, but you got to be perfect. And the Hawks just simply were not perfect. And I will say, after the defense was pretty bad for at least the third quarter, if not for a lot of the game, it was actually pretty darn good in the fourth. It was that the Hawks just could not score. They just could not score. In the competitive portion, like the first 10 and a half minutes before it was pretty much garbage time, in the fourth, the Hawks were 7 of 20 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, with 7 turnovers in about 10 minutes. And that they had 16 points in like 10 minutes. And it was right there in front of them. They got enough stops to make a comeback in the fourth quarter. It was that their offense, this is why I kind of led with the offense earlier. They just weren't good enough on that end of the floor overall, whether it was starters, backups, etc. Other than really the first, stretch of the game with the starting lineup on the court, and also the end of the first half, again, with some of the starters on the court, along with Hunter, it was pretty rough in between and for most of the second half. So we'll leave it there for now. But again, overall, I would say a game in which the Hawks did not bring their A game by any means, nor were they embarrassing. They did play a quality opponent on the road, but not quite enough offensively, and we'll leave it there. All right, more to come in a second when it comes to the player-by-player evaluations on today's podcast. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. The basketball season is heating up right now, and there's no better way to get real money action when watching your favorite NBA stars than with PrizePicks. Whether you are a diehard fan or just love some friendly competition, PrizePicks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action, and they have over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, and they've made daily fantasy sports accessible to all at PrizePicks. Here's how it works. Pick more or pick less on at least 2 players with a wide variety of sports, including the NBA, NFL, college sports, baseball, and much more. When you do that, you can also have a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. If your player that you're looking for will drop 30 points or get more than 8 assists, etc., you actually make your predictions, put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. I've been using PrizePicks for a long time now. Let me tell you this, it's a lot of fun. They have a flex play option as well. PrizePicks, so even if one of your picks does not actually hit, you can still double your money at PrizePicks as well. Plus, once you hit a lineup, you get your money fast, sometimes as quickly as 15 minutes. It's also the best way to keep the game exciting for you. And now is the perfect time to join up with the folks at PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. That's right. No need to win that bonus. It's actually guaranteed for you when you play a first $5 lineup. It's $50 instantly at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, and to the guys who performed in this game, positively, negatively, etc., a 9-man rotation for Atlanta in this game. The guys who were active and did not play, David Roddy, Don Barlow, Daquan Plowden. Everybody else either in the G League or hurt for the Hawks right now, including Ricochet, who will be reevaluated later this week, and we'll see how that goes in advance of the game on Wednesday. Let's just start here. Bogdan Bogdanovic was quite bad again for Atlanta. The headliner is that Bogey, the big streak is over. So if you've been following this for a while, it's been almost 2 full calendar years since Bogey had a game in which he played and did not make a 3. 110 consecutive games, the 5th longest streak in the history of the NBA. Number 2 for the Hawks behind Kyle Korver back in his 10 years ago prime for Atlanta. And that is now over. Bogey was 0 for 4 from 3 in this game. He was really not very good. 3 turnovers, minus 15. He just did not play well at all. I won't do the whole thing now, but if you're listening to the podcast recently, you'll know this. He's not that far away from being, in my view, the best reserve in the league last year. He had a really good summer with Serbia, but this season has been a disaster for Bogey, and at the moment, he is basically unplayable. Now, when I say that, I'm not advocating to not play him. There's people now that are yelling. I get it. Number one, I get it totally, but yelling and screaming about how Bogey shouldn't play. Now, I think people need to realize the dynamics in play here. Bogey is not that old. Bogey has been a very, very key part of the organization for a long time. And guys of Bogey's stature, again, Bogey, I thought should have won 6th man of the year last season. Guys like that do not just stop playing like DNP CDs. That doesn't really happen. very often. It has to be that's a pretty strong decision that somebody has to make, and we're not there yet, I don't think. But at the same time, he is not playing well. And to their credit, the Hawks are playing him less because he's not giving them anything. He's been brutal. So maybe it's a confidence thing. He was 0-4 from 3 in the game. Defensively, it's never been great in recent years for Bogey. So I am saying two things at once. I don't think Bogey has been good at all this year. Like, he has been brutal this season. At the same time, I do tend to lean more than most do on priors, and I tend to look at sample sizes. And I still of the mind that Bogey will come out of this. But right now, it has been really rough, and that is undeniable at this point. Garrison Matthews, 12 minutes, took one shot. That can't happen, in my opinion, for Garrison. He was better than Bogey, but to get nothing from Garrison and Bogey from offensive standpoint, it's just not tenable, because defensively, Garrison plays hard for sure. But to play those guys 27 minutes and have them not make a field goal and take only 5 shots in the field and score 3 points, that's going to hurt your offense. No question about that. And that happened in this game for the two of them. Capela played 20 minutes off the bench in this one. Again, the big change that happened. 12 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 turnovers. I thought Clint was totally fine. He had one really, really bad stint, and I think it was the third quarter offensively, where he missed a couple of bunnies in a row in frustrating Capela fashion. And yeah, he's not Okongwu. Okongwu's a lot more skilled than Clint. It's not like there is a nuanced conversation to be had here. I thought Capela defensively was pretty fine in this game. Offensively, he helps him a lot on the glass. He finished reasonably beyond that one hiccup where he missed 2 shots in a row. He was 5-7 otherwise in the game. He didn't play great, but he was not like a catastrophe either. There you go. DeAndre Hunter, 22 points. 0 rebounds is a little bit weird for Hunter. It was a scoring and nothing else game for DeAndre. He was okay-ish defensively, but not great. 22 points, though, on 3 of 7 from 2, 4 of 7 from 3. He got hot as a jump shooter. He was +1 in the game. Part of that was because he just made shots and other guys didn't. I thought he did his job. He was good. He wasn't incredible, but he was good as a scorer. To the starters. Vit Krejci, 33 minutes, 11 points, 4 assists, a steal. He was really good in the first half. He was pretty quiet and like not in a great way after halftime. Like not terrible, but certainly didn't do a ton in the second half. I thought Vit did a pretty decent job. We'll see how much he keeps playing this much, but in a game with, I think basically they're giving Bogey's normal minutes to Vit, and that's acceptable. Vit's been better than Bogey recently. So if that happens, that's what's going to happen moving forward. Okongwu, 14 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. He's 7-10 from the floor, 7-9 from 2-point range, 28 minutes. He played well. He wasn't as good today as he's been in the previous 3 games, but he was good for sure, especially in the first half. Second half, it was not particularly awesome for Onyeka. I think the defensive side of the floor, he is just not quite the same consistent anchor that you would want at this point. The flashes were there, and I think offensively he makes the whole thing better. It is very stark when you see the offense. They've used him more as a passer, more as a hub. That is working. I think the skill package that I've always been tantalized by with Okongwu has been popping offensively. You love to see that. Defensively, it's highs and lows, I would say. But he was good in the game. He was not a problem whatsoever. Overall, I think second half, I think he would admit this. He was not great, but I think he, generally speaking, played well in 28 minutes. Dyson Daniels, 10 points, 3 steals, 3 assists, 4 rebounds. +2, fouled out in the game, 31 minutes. I thought he was good. Obviously, Brunson got loose a little bit with 34 points, but that's not really like on Dyson. Like, he played well, I thought. Good force on offense, generally speaking, too. 5-6 from 2-point range. He was good. Didn't light the world on fire, but 3 steals. He's just very, very solid, as he always is. And Jalen Johnson, 11 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block for Jalen. He was only 4 of 12 from the field, so 11 points on 13 shooting possessions. Jalen was not efficient at all in this one. He had the worst plus-minus of any starter with -13 in this game. Not his best. I don't think he was terrible, but he was not very good offensively. Just didn't finish. He wasn't efficient, nor was he aggressive enough in my mind. So, we'll see how he fares moving forward. But I think, he'll have better days for sure. And I said this earlier on the show, but Trey had a turnover barrage that you can't really justify. He did 27 points in the game, hit 6 threes. Only 3 guys on the team made a 3. Trey hit 6, Vit hit 3, Hunter made 4, nobody else made 1. The rest of the team, I believe, was 0 of 7 combined. Yeah, 0 of 7 combined. Joe didn't even take 1 in the game, which is a little bit strange. But, Trey had 6 assists, 3 steals. Like, he was okay. The turnovers were take it from being pretty good down to okay or below average. Like, he wasn't bad, but the turnovers were not good. And then, I think he actually was competitive defensively. The steals and the block kind of tell the story there, but only 2 of 10 inside the arc as well. So the combination of 2 of 10 on 2s and 9 turnovers is not good for Trey. So he'll have better nights too. He wasn't awful, but not the best either. And we'll leave it there for now. So it was a tough one for the Hawks. It is not a game that you like go to sleep, unable to sleep for this one. Like there are losses that are maddening. Wizards losses, for instance, Blazers losses, etc. This isn't one of those, but it's one that the Hawks, I think, will probably also be kicking themselves for because this was definitely winnable for Atlanta. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. The Hawks do play again in a couple of days. They'll finally be back at home. I gave a stat earlier, but they go 5-5 in the 24-day stretch with one game at home. That's wild, but it happened. Now, the next 3 games are at home. Wednesday against Detroit, Thursday against Toronto, Saturday against Toronto. So 3 games in 4 nights is never easy, but with no travel, it's a little bit easier. And also Toronto is not very good. Detroit, though, is good. Detroit, how about this? Detroit is 22-21. They are right next to the Hawks in the standings. That'll be an interesting measuring stick game for the Hawks. The Pistons also beat the Hawks in Detroit earlier this year. I was there for that one. So that'll be a tough one. We'll see how that goes. The Hawks will probably be small favorites in that game. And then just an opportunity to kind of get right a little bit. So they'll be home Monday night. It's not a full like 2 games, start 2 days between games kind of rest, but they do get a extra bit of rest because it's an afternoon game on Monday, full day Tuesday, and then they're back on the floor on Wednesday against Detroit. I'll have full podcast content, as you might imagine, later on this week. I'll have game breakdowns after all 3 of those matchups and maybe something else in between. So we'll see how that goes. Also forgive the logistical challenges. I teased that a little bit on the show on Saturday night, but hopefully I'll be back to normal with my normal mic, normal lighting, etc. It's been a catastrophe for me technology-wise in the last couple of days, so forgive that. Hopefully this came across okay with a strange background and strange mics and all that stuff. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I very much appreciate it. Please follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. You can also find my work across the non-podcast space at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, please subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends. Enjoy the rest of your Monday into Tuesday, and we'll see you all next time.